What's going on YouTube? I got inspired to make this video after watching the first presidential debate for this year because I realized I'm not going to learn anything useful from watching the debates that's actually going to help me figure out who I want to vote for in this upcoming election. So I did my own research and looked at their policies and their proposals, and I figured why not share that with everybody on YouTube to help you guys figure out who you might want to vote for in this upcoming election. Now, I'm not going to be diving into their other policy changes like domestic and foreign policies and going down the whole list. Primarily because number one, this channel is a finance channel, and number two, this video would be way too long if I did that. So for this video, we're just going to be looking at their economic and tax policies and kind of differentiating between the two and what new changes they want to make in this upcoming term. So we're going to start with the incumbent party, the Republicans and Donald Trump, and we're looking at the corporate tax rate first. Currently, right now, it's 21%, and that's what Trump wants to keep it at. Now, the last time that we've seen a corporate tax rate that low wasn't until back in the 1920s to the 1940s. It was actually even a little bit lower back then, but we haven't seen it that low since then. And Biden, on the other hand, wants to bring the corporate tax rate up to 28%. And we've actually seen the corporate tax rate much higher than 28% before. The highest it's been is around 52%. And actually, under the Obama administration, it was 35%. And Obama did mention that he wanted to bring it down to 28%. However, it never happened for whatever reason. I'm not sure. I didn't look into that. Now, next point, capital gains. I'm going to quickly break down what capital gains are for you. Capital gains is when you buy an investment, make a profit on it, and sell it, and you're taxed on that profit. They just call the profit capital gains instead of calling it profit. So for an example, you buy a $100,000 house, you sell it for $200,000. You made a profit of $100,000, which they'll call capital gains, which then you get taxed on. Now, under the current capital gains structure, if you make less than $40,000 a year, you won't pay any taxes on that $100,000 that you just made. Now, on the other hand, if you make between $40,000 and $441,000 a year, you will be taxed 15% on that $100,000. And if you make over $441,000 a year, you will be taxed 20% on that $100,000. What Trump would like to do, essentially, is change this 20% to 15%, or essentially just make it where there is no high bracket, however you want to look at it. Essentially, this is really only going to affect people who make more than $441,000 a year, and it's going to benefit them by lowering the taxes that they would have to pay. Now, on the other hand, what Biden wants to do, keeping the same structure except for the last group, which is currently 20, he wants to essentially double it, bringing it to 39.6%. So again, this is only going to affect people making more than $441,000 a year. They would end up having to pay $40,000 on that $100,000 capital gain. Now I want to just stop right here and try to say, when I'm saying this is going to help, this is going to hurt, I'm trying to do so in the most bipartisan way, just to help you understand what these things are doing and who they're helping and who they're hurting. I'm not saying in any way that one is good or one is bad. I'll leave that up to you. But anyways, let's look at the next change. Trump would like to take the 22% tax bracket down to 15%. So the 22% tax bracket is anyone who's making between $40,126 and $85,525. He wants to take that down to 15% instead of 22. And for married people, it's $80,251 to $171,050. So this is going to put more money in the people's pockets for that income tax bracket. Now, Biden, on the other hand, is proposing to increase the top tax bracket, which is currently at 37%. Where am I on here? And he wants to bring it to 39.6%. So raise it a little bit, but really not going to make that much of a difference. And this is only going to affect people making $518,000 or more a year, or if you're married, $622,000 or more a year. So this isn't really going to affect most people out there, and it might not affect them that much either, as it's only going up 2.6%. Now, another change that Trump wants to make to the capital gains is he wants to index for inflation. So let's go back to that original example. You bought a house for $100,000 and you sold it for $200,000. But let's say you did it over a 10-year period. And over that 10-year period, there was, let's say, 2% average inflation per year. So you would adjust for that inflation, and let's say that inflation comes out to being $20,000 of inflation, and you would get rid of that. So meaning you'd take your $100,000 profit and you'd say, well, of that $100,000, $20,000 of that is inflation, so I'm going to subtract that, and now I'm only going to pay capital gains tax on $80,000. On Biden's side, he would like to tax investment income at ordinary income for people who make over $1 million a year, which their tax bracket would be 39.6%. And most income is either taxed at a capital gains, most investment income is either at a capital gains or it's already taxed as an ordinary income. So he didn't specify in his actual plans which investments he planned on taxing at the ordinary income level. So I'd be curious to see this if he actually lays it out somewhere. And by the way, guys, all this information that I'm getting is coming directly from Biden's website and his tax policy. You can go and see all of this. This is exactly where I got it from. And same for Trump. Got it on Trump's site. All right, next point. Trump wants to expand the OZ program. That is the Opportunity Zone program. That is where basically wealthy people take their money and they put it into this fund that is supposed to help develop low-income areas. And the longer you keep your money in that fund, the bigger the tax write-off you get. As you can see, 5 years, you get 10%, 7 years, 15%, 10 years, no taxes. So it helps, and he wants to expand the OZ program, but he doesn't say how or what his plans are to expand it. Now for Biden, he wants to increase the child credit to $3,000 per child between 6 and 17 years old. And for any children under 6, $3,600. Now this would just be temporary for as long as the market deems it's necessary, which again is going to benefit and help anyone who has children. Clearly, the more children, the better in this scenario. Now, Trump would like to impose a payroll tax cut for those who make $104,500 a year or less, which would essentially mean you're saving 6.2%, or your income would essentially go up by 6.2%. And Trump wants to make that actually where it's forgiven, because right now in his executive order, he has passed that, but the problem with it is it's not a forgiven payroll tax cut. It's something where you don't have to pay it right now, but you're still gonna owe that money in the future. So it's kind of like, why even take the tax cut now if I'm gonna have to pay it back? Well, Trump wants to make this tax cut permanent or forgivable to where you don't pay that 6.2% now or in the future. Now, the problem with this is in order for Trump to get that to actually pass, the Republicans would probably need to sweep the House, the Senate, and the White House. But that's also the same for a lot of Biden's proposals. In order for Biden to get a lot of these through, the Democrats would also have to sweep the House, the Senate, and the White House. And now Biden would like to expand access to refundable health premium tax credits. So what that means is it's basically helping people afford health insurance. But in order to decide who gets that tax credit, they use the federal poverty limit to decide that. And the federal poverty limit changes every single year. And to give you an example, the federal poverty limit for last year was $12,760. Now, in order to qualify for this credit, you have to be at 100% to 400% of the federal poverty limit, which would be if you made $12,760 or up to $51,040, you were in that federal poverty limit and you would qualify for this tax refund. Now, the tax refund is a sliding scale, so if you're closer to the $12,000, you're going to get a bigger tax refund as opposed to someone who's making $51,000. Yours is going to be much smaller. And I'm not sure because it didn't say in the Biden page, but I wouldn't be surprised to see if this is adjusted for depending on where you live. I think each state might have a different federal poverty limit that's localized to them. I don't know, or maybe they just follow the whole government scheme, but it wouldn't really make sense for someone in Idaho making $51,000 a year to still be considered in the federal poverty limit. But someone in New York City, you could make an argument for that. All right, back to Trump. He wants to give a tax credit for travel expenses, $4,000 tax credit for single, $8,000 tax credit for married couples, and $500 for children. That would be nice. I would love to go travel, but I don't know if I would want to go travel right now with coronavirus around. And looking at Biden, he would like to give out an $8,000 tax credit to low-income and middle-class families for childcare. Now, he does not specify in his actual policy plans what qualifies as low-income and middle-class family. I'm sure it's somewhere, but it's not easy to find. And Trump would like to give out a tax credit for donations to certain organizations that provide scholarships. So essentially, if you donate to this organization that provides scholarships for people between kindergarten through 12th grade, you can deduct 10%, or you'll get a 10% tax credit for individuals. Now, corporations can also do this, and they'll get a 5% tax credit off of their taxable income. Now, Biden would like to more impose some fees or some extra taxes on corporations. But before we get into that, last one for Biden, as far as more tax credits, he wants to give a $15,000 first-time home buyers minimum tax. Oh, I'm reading two in one. Getting ahead of myself. $15,000 first-time home buyers tax credit. So anyone out there who's going to buy their first home would essentially get like let me put it into perspective like this. If you've ever bought a home before and you've asked the seller for credit for repairs, right? Maybe something came up in the inspection report and you say, this is gonna cost me $2,000. So they give you a credit for $2,000, which offsets your closing costs a little bit. You have to come to the closing table with $2,000 less. Imagine this as a $15,000 seller credit, except it's coming from the government, which means $15,000 first-time homebuyer credit. Most closing costs don't even come close to $15,000. So that is going to make it very, very affordable for people to buy homes, and I wouldn't be surprised if that boosts residential home prices up a bit. And Biden would also like to do a minimum tax on all foreign earnings. I believe it's 21%, which Biden says is double what Trump's is. I don't know if that's true. I didn't verify what Trump's is. That's just what Biden's site says. And basically the idea behind this is to sort of disincentivize companies from taking their companies offshore into foreign countries and to keep jobs in America. But if they decide to go and bring their companies offshore, then they're going to be penalized for it and pay a higher tax. Now, there's actually more proposals from Biden that I wasn't able to fit on this board, and let's get into those here. He actually does want to give some credits. Well, actually, let's get into the tax penalty before we do the credits. Tax penalty on corporations that ship jobs overseas, a 10% tax penalty. Now, as far as credits though, how does he want to keep jobs in America? He wants to do a 10% advanceable tax credit for companies making investments that will create jobs for American workers, revitalizing closed or closing facilities, bringing overseas services back to the US. So essentially what he's saying here is, if you take a company that is basically on its way out, it's on its last leg, it's about to die, and you dump more capital into that to try to revitalize it and bring it back, which essentially he's assuming will promote more jobs, he'll give you a 10% tax credit. Or if you currently have one of your companies, maybe you have a couple branches, right? You have some in the US, you have some in maybe Italy. If you bring your Italy branch back to the US, he'll give you a 10% tax credit. All right, and then he also is looking to do a 15% minimum tax on book income on firms with 100 million or more in net income. So this goes back to the Amazon example, right? Everyone was raving about how Amazon made so much money but didn't pay anything in taxes. Well, that's because there's paper losses, right? So you come down to it, you got your gross income, you've got your expenses, now you've got your net income, and then there's other losses. There's previous year losses that you can carry forward. There's also depreciation, which is just a paper loss. You didn't actually spend any money on it, and you can essentially make your net income look like you made nothing for the year and therefore pay $0 in taxes. So Biden's saying, no, we're going to look at your net income before you add in the depreciation and your previous year losses and all this other stuff and tax you on that. A minimum of 15%. All right, now here are some honorable mentions that I have heard that the Biden Kamala Harris team would like to make, but I did not see them on the Biden website, and that is why I didn't include them here, but I'd like to at least mention them. One is the 1031 exchange. Biden, from what I hear, but I haven't seen it on the website, would like to get rid of the 1031 exchange, which is where if you buy a real estate investment and then you go to sell that property, you'd have to pay taxes, just like the capital gains tax here. But if instead you take those gains and then you buy another bigger like-kind property with that money, you can defer those taxes. You don't have to pay it yet. You pay me when you sell that property. Now, Biden would essentially like to get rid of that, which would hurt real estate, mainly commercial real estate, which commercial's already hurting pretty badly. Next, stepped up tax basis. It's rumored that Biden would like to get rid of the stepped up tax basis, and this would hurt people who are looking to pass on their generational wealth. So what that means is if you buy that $100,000 house, going back to our first example, and you never sell that property, and then you give it on to your kids, they're going to get a stepped up tax basis. So if by the time you give it on to your kids, it's now worth $1 million, if you would have sold it before you gave it to your kids, you would have to pay taxes on $900,000. $1 million minus what you bought it for, $100,000, you have to pay taxes on $900,000. Now, if you die and give it to your kids and you never sold it, if your kids decide to sell it right then and there for $1 million, they don't have to pay taxes on it because it's as if they bought it for $1 million because they're getting a stepped up tax basis. So if they sell it right then and there, they pay zero taxes on it. Biden would like to get rid of that so that if your kids sell it, they still are gonna have to pay on that $900,000 gain. And the last one, Social Security payroll tax of 12.4%. And this would be like a donut hole. So it's essentially more going to impact people at the higher levels. But again, I'm not gonna get too into this because I didn't see it on Biden's page. This is just something that I saw on other news articles. But if I didn't see it on Biden's page or Trump's page, I didn't include it here. Now, if you guys like this video, or depending on how well this video does, I might do a breakdown of what economists are saying the impact of a Biden policy or a Biden presidency would be on the market. So if you guys want to see that video, let me know down in the comments below, like this video, and share it with people you know would like this as well. Thanks.